So you know that cliffhanger I left with you at the end of the last episode? You know, this one? I was recording the fight I had with Nargacuga right after the ending of the first episode, but later when I was deleting some unneeded files, I accidentally deleted the footage I had for that fight, so I gotta explain how the fight ended before we move on. We wiped the floor with him. Now onto the video. Anticlimactic explanation aside, I emptied the recycle bin and there's no redoing the fight against Nargacuga, so in short, no one died on my team so far. But what I do have to do before we get to the action, in which case you can just click on the timestamp in the description to skip to it, I've got to clarify a couple things. There's a rule I forgot to add in the Nuzlocke challenge that makes getting new Monsties more diverse. That would be the dupes clause. In other words, if you get the exact same monster you got before, you can get a different egg from the den you searched in, i.e. common or rare dens. Second, the rule about receiving gift eggs pertains to getting them from towns or areas that don't have the same name as one particular area. To explain in a way that's easy, this means towns are considered areas separate from the main wild areas. For example, Hakum Village is a separate area from Pandri Hills. The reason I explain this is because the Velocidrome you receive at the start isn't from any den you encounter. I'm pretty sure it's the only egg that is given to you aside from egg fragments from online battles. And lastly, I may change the rules of the Nuzlocke depending on what happens throughout the progression of the game. With all that out of the way, let's get to the video. After beating Nargacuga, even though we have no evidence beating it, we move on to the Darj snowfields. I probably butchered the Darj part, but forgive me if I pronounced it incorrectly. We start to explore and find yet another Poogie and find ourselves in a very cold cave. We then come across a Barioth protecting a girl. It realizes we have a kinship stone and calms down. Niviro tries to greet it only to get punted. We see that the girl is unconscious and decide to help. As soon as we go to leave the cave, a Lagambi comes out of nowhere and starts attacking us. This fight was a little hard due to forgetting to use Hot Mist to insulate my team. Despite being frozen every other turn, we still came out on top. We leave the cave and now have to follow Barioth to the cabins. You know you could have done this in the first place, right? I mean, it's not hard to get out of the cave and seek shelter for a beast as strong as yourself. We follow Barioth and get ambushed by Zamites. We make quick work of them as they are not very strong. We continue to follow Barioth and get ambushed again, and like before, the Zamites aren't hard. Without any further interruptions, we finally get to the cabins. The girl gains consciousness and tells us her name is Avinia and her Barioth is named Frostfang and asks about us as a rider. She then explains it's why Frostfang trusted us. How do you know this? You were unconscious the entire time. You weren't even slightly awake when we found you. She then tells us to fetch her some mountain herbs to prove our worth. Okay, I can deal with the fact that you somehow knew about our presence being unconscious, but now we have to prove our worth after helping you? Did they even think this part through? On our way to do her unnecessary favor, we go to find our first two dens of this area. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Skip the area until you can unlock Tigrex. Now here's the thing. I prefer Brute Tigrex over the normal one, so sorry not sorry? We go into the nest area to find a Zamtrios guarding the nest. We do battle, and this is a difficult one because I never thought I'd face a Zamtrios this early on. We'll get to why that is in a bit. I actually almost lost our Aptonoth named Parasaur, but I did manage to see my team through this one with no deaths. Now that that's done, we can now get our rare egg from our rare den. Oh, not again! Yeah, I forgot to mention, you're not guaranteed to get rare eggs from the rare dens. So I got unlucky from this one, although I might have an idea of what it is. We go on to a common den to find our second egg. Let's hope we get a better find. I mean, the first one gave me the opposite, so now we can— Oh, are you kidding me? We go up to our destination and find what we need. We get ambushed by a Zamtrios that we now have to fight again. Now you see why I had a problem with the first one. We almost lost Derpybird due to being unfamiliar with the phone version's QTEs. However, despite that, we wipe out Zamtrios. We come back with the herbs and we are now worthy as if we weren't already. We are now introduced to a weird Vivarian that looks like Ludicolo. I'm not kidding. He looks like a Ludicolo. He tells us to go get dumplings from a hot spring, but before we do that, we hatch our egg and it's exactly what I thought. A Bulldrome. I name it Bullybub. We hatch our next egg and it's a Popo. I name it Trunkless because, well, it's a mammoth with no trunk. We hitch a ride on our new Bullybub and ride out to find the hot springs and coincidentally run into a wild Bulldrome. We fight, and this wasn't too hard apart from almost losing Derpybird again, so I had to switch him out with Blooper. We defeat the big boar and go on to the hot springs. When we get there, we see some unimportant NPCs that are probably on vacation. We also find two more Poogies here. When we get back to the entrance, we talk to Avinia and she remembers that she was attacked by a Kazu. Oh boy. We return to the cabins and Avinia asks us to get a monster that the channeler riddled. You know, the Ludicolo guy. And for some of you who read this riddle and are already fans of the franchise, you'll know that we'll have to find Legambi. Unfortunately, we already have our encounters for this area, so this is one of the mandatory fetch quests we have to do to progress. We come back with the egg and hatch a Legambi. Because it's not supposed to be on our team, we name it Channeler for the purposes of the cutscene. We see a sample Yonkaku's powers being transferred to the Legambi that becomes enraged with flames. With all of that cleared, we are ready to fight Kezu. On our way to the Wintertide Tunnel, we hit a dead end. Avinia and Frostfang show up and clear our way. I guess she appreciates us more this time. On our way to the deeper parts of the cave, we fight 3 Bolfango at once. They were all pretty easy. As we find yet another Poogie, we reach our target. And one of my least favorite monsters, Kezu. This monster is not only hideous, its powers are pretty brutal. So brutal I fainted and lost a heart. Didn't lose any team members yet though. Kezu is known for electric powers that can catch you off guard, even in the main series games. But after the struggle, we come out on top. Even after this victory, trials lie ahead for us in the new areas. Will we be able to keep our no-death streak going? Or will we actually lose a team member? Find out on the next episode of the Monster Hunter Stories Nuzlocke Challenge. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this Nuzlocke Challenge so far, consider liking, subscribing, and sharing. Remember to be kind to one another, and have a most wonderful day.